Hello everybody, I'm Miss Jessica from EVPL Oakland, and I'm back for our Chapter Book Storytime Variety Pack. And this week I'm so excited about our story because last time when we were together we spun our wheel and we landed on adventure. And there's so many great adventure books out there that I'm really excited to share this one with you. So this one, I swear it's always the cover that gets me and makes me wonder what's inside that book. What is that story about? How does it all connect? I also love it when a book does something to kind of get that overall quality to it that kind of all ties together. And this one has this kind of like rough and bumpy, uneven pages. And that lends itself to making me feel like I'm reading some kind of old book that's really exciting and has something really interesting to offer. Okay, so this week we are going to be reading House of Secrets. And I don't know if you can see how this house is definitely a very interesting looking house, but it has water going on down here and there's sharks in the water. So obviously this house has something very exciting going on here. And this is by Chris Columbus and Ned Vizzini. And if you are watching this with your grown-up, they might recognize the name Chris Columbus. He is actually a writer and director. So he has done movies like Home Alone. He directed the first two Harry Potter movies. He's also done the stories for The Goonies, which is a very old movie, adventure movie that's one of my all-time favorites. So he is definitely in that cinematic kind of storytelling. So I love that he has a book out and it's about an adventure. Okay, so let's see what the inside cover says. Brendan, Eleanor, and Cordelia Walker once had everything. 2 loving parents, a beautiful house in San Francisco, and all the portable electronic devices they could want. But everything changed when Dr. Walker lost his job in the wake of a mysterious incident. Now in dire straits, the family must relocate to an old Victorian house that used to be the home of the occult novelist Denver Christoph. A house that feels simultaneously creepy and too good to be true. By the time the Walkers realize that one of their neighbors has sinister plans for them, they're banished to a primeval forest way off the grid. Their parents? Gone. Their friends? A world away. And they aren't alone. Bloodthirsty medieval warriors patrol the woods around him. Supernatural pirates roam the neighboring seas, and a power-hungry queen rules the land. To survive, the siblings will have to be braver than they ever thought possible and fight against their darkest impulses. The key may lie in their own connection to the secret Christoph legacy. But as they unravel their legacy, they'll discover it's not just their family that's in danger, it's the entire world. Ooh, so lots of different types of things going on in this book. Okay, so we're going to start with chapter 1. Brendan Walker knew the house was going to be terrible. The first tip-off was the super cheerful tone the real estate agent Diane Dobson used with his mother. "It's truly the most amazing house, Mrs. Walker," Diane chirped on speaker. "The perfect place for a sophisticated family like yours. It's just gone through a major price reduction." "Where is this house?" Brandon asked. Age 12, he sat next to his older sister Cordelia, playing Uncharted on his much-loved PSP. He sported his favorite grass-stained blue lacrosse jersey, torn jeans, and weathered high tops. "I'm sorry, who is that?" Diane asked from the dashboard of the car where an iPhone sat in a holster. "Our son Brendan," Dr. Walker answered. "You're on speaker." I'm talking with the whole Walker family? What a treat. "Well, Brendan," Diane sounded as if she expected to be commended for remembering his name. "The house is located on 128 Sea Cliff Avenue among a stately collection of homes owned by prominent San Franciscans." "Like 49ers and Giants?" asked Brendan. "Like CEOs and bankers," corrected Diane. "Shoot me." Bren, Mrs. Walker scolded. You won't feel that way when you've seen the place, said Diane. It's charming and rustic, woodsy jewel. Whoa, hold on, Cordelia interrupted. Say that again. With whom am I speaking now? Diane asked. With whom? Seriously, Cordelia thought. But the truth was she also used whom in her more intellectual moments. That's our daughter, Cordelia, Mrs. Walker, said Mrs. Walker, our eldest. What a pretty name! Don't pretty name me, Cordelia wanted to say, but as she was the eldest, she was better than Brendan at being tactful. She was a tall, wispy girl with delicate features that she hid behind dirty blonde bangs. Diane, my family has been looking for a new house for the last month. And in that time, I've learned that real estates speak in what I call coded language. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. Excuse me, but what does that mean? I'm sure I don't know, piped up Eleanor, age 8. She had sharp eyes, a small, precise nose, and long curly hair, the same color as her sister's. That sometimes had gum and leaves in it, if she'd been adventurous that day. She tended to be quiet except in moments when she wasn't supposed to be quiet, which was what Brendan and Cordelia loved most about her. How can you be sure if you don't know? Cordelia gave her sister an appreciative nod and continued, I mean that when real estate agents say charming, Diane, they mean small. When they say rustic, they mean located in a habitat for bears. Woodsy means termite infested. Jewel, I don't even know. I assume squat. Deal, stop being a tool, grumbled Brendan, glued to his screen, irritated that he hadn't thought up that line of reasoning himself. Cordelia rolled her eyes and went on, Diane, are you about to show my family a small termite-infested squat located in a bear habitat? Diane sighed over the speaker. How old is she? 15, Dr. and Mrs. Walker said together. She sounds 35. Why? Cordelia asked. Because I'm asking pertinent questions. Brendan reached over from the back seat and ended the call. Brendan, Mrs. Walker yelled. I'm just trying to save our family from some embarrassment. But Mrs. Dobson was about to tell us about the house. We already know what the house is going to be like. Like every other house we can't afford. Bad. I have to agree, Cordelia said. And you know how much it hurts me to agree with Brendan. You love agreeing with me, Brendan mumbled, because that's when you know you're right. Cordelia laughed, which made Brendan smile despite himself. Good one, Bren, said Eleanor, giving her brother's uncombed hair a quick rub. Kids, let's try to be positive about the house, said Dr. Walker. Seacliff is Seacliff. We're talking unobstructed views of the Golden Gate. I want to see it, and I want to know about the reduced price. What was the address? 128, Brendan said without looking up. He had an eerie ability to remember things. It came from memorizing sports plays and game cheats. His parents joked that he would end up a lawyer because of it. And because he was so good at arguing, Brendan didn't want to end up a lawyer. He wanted to end up a 49er or a giant. Plug it into my phone, will you, Dr. Walker? Waved the phone in front of Brendan while he drove. I'm in the middle of a game, Dad. So I can't just pause. Isn't there a pause button? Cordelia asked. Nobody's talking to you, Deal, said Brendan. Could you guys just leave me alone, please? You're practically alone, said Cordelia. You always have your head buried in your stupid games, and then you get out of going to dinner with us because of lacrosse practice. And you refuse to go on trips. It's like you don't even want to be part of this family. You are a genius, said Brendan. You guessed my secret. Eleanor swooped in, grabbed the phone, and plugged in the address, but she did it backward, putting the street in first and then the number. Cordelia started to give Brendan a nasty retort, but reminded herself that he was in that awkward stage for boys. The stage where you were supposed to say horribly sarcastic things because you looked so gawky. It was the house that was the real problem. Even Eleanor was suspicious of it now. It was going to be old enough for people to have died in. It was going to be falling apart and have crooked shutters and layers of dirt an inch thick and an overgrown tree out in the front and a bunch of snoopy neighbors who were going to look at the Walkers and whisper, here are the suckers. We're gonna buy this thing. But what could they do? At 8, 12, and 15, Eleanor, Brendan, and Cordelia were each absolutely sure that they were at the worst possible age, the most powerless and unfair. So Brendan gamed and Cordelia read, and Eleanor fiddled with the GPS until they pulled up at 128 Seacliff Avenue. Then they looked out the window and their jaws dropped. They had never seen anything like it. Chapter 2. Seacliff was a neighborhood of mansions on hills, most built right up against the sunny street with its row of young trees and trimmed to a perfect leafy spheres. But the house the Walkers were looking at was set back, perched at the edge of a cliff from which the neighborhood took its name, so far back that Brendan wondered if it was half supported by stilts. An expansive emerald lawn buffered it from the street, with 3 wide pine trees that kept the grass in shadow. The house itself had gold and tan trim, accenting the royal blue that wrapped around its slanted sides. An impeccably groomed pebbled path slalomed through the trees to the front door. "I've biked here tons of times, but I've never seen this place," said Cordelia. "That's because you never look up from your stupid book," said Brendan. "And how do you figure I'm reading when I'm on a bike, genius?" "Audiobooks?" "Guys, no fighting in front of the real estate agent," Mrs. Walker said under her breath. She had already called Diane Dobson back to apologize for how Brendan had hung up on her, and now they saw a woman who looked like Hillary Clinton standing at the front of the path. "This must be her. Let's go." The Walker family stepped out of their Toyota, bumping into one another. Diane greeted them wearing a finely tailored coral-colored suit, her hair lacquered into a blonde helmet. She made the house look even more impressive. "Dr. Jake Walker," Dr. Jake Walker, Dr. Walker said, reaching out to shake, "and this is my wife, Bellamy." Mrs. Walker nodded demurely. Dr. Walker didn't bother to introduce his offspring. He hadn't shaved this morning, even though he used to make a point of telling his children how men who didn't shave every day lacked discipline. But he wasn't the man he'd been back then. Diane eyed the family's second-hand sedan. "Can we keep our horse here?" Eleanor asked, tugging Dr. Walker's leg. "We don't have a horse, Nell," he laughed. "She's going through a horse phase," he explained to Diane. "It's perfect, Daddy. You said I could get a horse on my next birthday." "That was if we got a country house, which we're not getting, and you can't keep horses in the city." "Why not? There's lots of places to ride them. Golden Gate Park, Chrissy Field. You think I don't remember things you promise." Mrs. Walker knelt and took Eleanor's shoulders in her hands. "Honey, we'll talk about this later." "But Daddy always—" "Calm down. It's not Daddy's fault. Things have changed. Why don't we play a game? Here, close your eyes and tell me what kind of horse you want in your wildest dreams. Come on, I'll do it with you." Mrs. Walker shut her eyes. Eleanor followed. Brendan rolled his eyes instead of shutting them, but he was tempted deep down to join in. Cordelia shut hers, in solidarity with her sister and to annoy Brendan. "And open," said Mrs. Walker. "What kind of horse is she?" "Is he?" "She. Calico, light brown with white spots. Her name's Misty." "Perfect." Mrs. Walker hugged her daughter tight, stood up, and went back to looking at the house with Diane Dobson, who had waited patiently for the family to work out their obvious issues. "Delightful, isn't she?" the real estate agent said. "A completely unique construction." "There are some things about it that concern me," Mrs. Walker said. Brendan saw that she was entering negotiation mode, where she used her charm and poise to make people do things. Standing in front of the home, she looked strong and beautiful, more confident than she had been in months. Brendan wondered if it might be fate that had brought them to this house. "What concerns you?" asked Diane. "First of all," said Mrs. Walker, "the house is on the edge of a cliff. It seems very precarious. And what would happen in an earthquake? We'd slide right into the ocean." "The house emerged from the quake of 1989 without a scratch," Diane said. "The engineering is superb. Come inside. Let's take a look." Intrigued, the Walkers followed her up the path toward the house, past the big pine trees. Brendan noticed something odd about the lawn. It took him a minute to realize. There was no for sale sign. What kind of house goes on sale without a sign? "This is a 3-story landmark Victorian," Diane declared, "known locally as Christoph House. It was built in 1907 after the Great Quake by a gentleman who survived it." Dr. Walker nodded. His family, too, had survived the Great San Francisco earthquake generations before. They had moved away, but work had brought Dr. Walker back. Work he no longer had. 218, Eleanor said, pointing at the address hanging over the front door. 128, Cordelia corrected gently. Eleanor huffed and looked down at her feet. Diane continued her monologue on the front steps, but Cordelia hung back and knelt beside her sister. This might be a teachable moment, as Cordelia's English teacher, Mrs. Cavanaugh, liked to say, since one of the effects of Eleanor's dyslexia was that she read things backwards. Cordelia figured there must be a simple psychological trick that could get her to read perfectly. They just hadn't found it yet. Brendan lingered, eager to see Cordelia fail. Can you try reading it backwards? She encouraged. It's not that simple, deal. You think you know everything. Well, I have read books about this, and I'm trying to help. Then where were you at school last week? What are you talking about? This stupid substitute in my English class called on me to read from A Little House on the Prairie, and I couldn't do it. As she said the words, Eleanor remembered the day at school. Miss Fitzsimmons had been out sick, and Eleanor had been too scared to tell the sub that she had a problem reading. So she went in front of the class and held the book and waited for magic to happen. She thought that maybe somehow, just once, magic would happen and she'd be able to read a sentence the right way. But the words looked as mixed up as they always did. Not backwards, Cordelia, she thought, mixed up. And when she tried to read the title, the first 4 words came out right, but the last one came out like a swear word. The whole class laughed, and Eleanor dropped the book and ran out of the room and the sub sent her to the principal, and everybody was still calling her that swear word. Cordelia spoke in a quiet voice. Oh, Eleanor, I'm so sorry, but I can't be with you in class. No, you can't, so don't pretend you can fix me. Cordelia winced. Brendan, amused by her failure, prepared to deliver a cutting remark, but before he could, "What's that?" Eleanor exclaimed. Brendan and Cordelia glanced over in time to see a figure streaking from one of the pine trees to the side of the house. A flash of shadow, too fast to be a person. A car honked on Sleek Cliff Avenue behind them. That was probably just the car's shadow, Nell, said Brendan, jumping from the tree to the house. No, it wasn't. It was a person. And it was bald, insisted Eleanor. You saw a bald guy? Girl, an old woman staring at us, and now she's behind the house. Brendan and Cordelia glanced at each other, each expecting the other to make a silly Eleanor face, but they were both as deadly serious as their sister. They looked at the side of the Kristoff house. The silhouette of a dark figure stood there, watching them. All right, chapter 3. Brendan took a deep breath and tried to stay calm, strong. The figure remained still. Hello? He called, stepping off the path and pulling Eleanor with him. Cordelia followed close behind. Is someone there? He was trying to use his toughest voice, but it cracked. More Sesame Street than Schwarzenegger. He cleared his throat to cover it as he and his siblings crept up the side of the house. The figure was nothing but an old statue, a Gothic angel looming 6 feet tall, carved from gray stone stained with streaks of green and black. It had wings folded behind it and the arms stretched forward with the right hand broken off. Its face was worn down, chinless and lipless, eroded by decades of San Francisco wind and fog. Mossy patches covered its eyes. Here is a picture. Beautiful, said Cordelia. Brendan wiped his forehead, surprised to find it covered in sweat. It was stupid, but he'd expected to see the person Eleanor had described, a bald woman, a crone. His imagination ran away with him a little, and he could even picture this woman pointing a crooked finger and hissing, "Here are the suckers who will finally buy this house." See now, it's just a statue. There's no one here, Brendan said, putting his hand on Eleanor's shoulder. She went somewhere. It was the light. It played a trick on you. No, it didn't. Let go. You're scared. Let it go. You're scared. Not as scared as you, said Eleanor, moving Brendan's hand away and pointing at the sweaty spot he had left on her shoulder. Before Brendan could protest, another hand reached out from behind him and grabbed his neck. We're going to stop there because we are at chapter 4. So if you are interested in continuing this book, that's where you will want to pick up, is at chapter 4. And really quick, I'm going to check my paper. Let's see, we have this book as an e-audiobook on Hoopla. We also have it as an e-book on Overdrive or our Libby app, and also as an e-audiobook on Overdrive or our Libby app as well. So you can listen to this as an audiobook version, or you can continue with a print version, or you can do it as an ebook. So lots of ways to continue the story. And I am totally interested to see how in the world the house gets surrounded by water that includes sharks. And as you can see, there's people kind of up on the house. So what is happening? What is going on with this house? Where do the parents go? I have a lot of questions. So I'm going to be continuing reading this book, and I hope you do too. So let's spin our wheel to find out what we'll be reading next time. All right, so we just finished our adventure story, so we're going to spin our wheel to find out what we're going to be reading next time. So if we happen to land on adventure, we'll spin again because I do want some variety with our stories. So we have science fiction, historical fiction, humor, fantasy, spooky, mystery, and realistic fiction. All right, let's see what we get. We just had adventure. Gotta spin again. Ooh, historical fiction. We haven't had that one in a while. All right, so next time we're together, we'll be reading a historical fiction story. And don't forget, we are alternating between myself and our friend, Miss Ellen from EVPL Oakland. So next week, she will have some really fun stories for you. And then I will see you in 2 weeks for a historical fiction story. All right, so thank you for joining us. Don't forget, you can always visit us at any of our EVPL locations, or you can also do a curbside service or enjoy any of our electronic resources or digital resources.